Welcome to the SENCast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the SENCast and the managing director of B Squared. If you are a new listener, then welcome to the SENCast. The aim of this podcast is really simple. We want to reach lots of people and help everyone, including me, learn more about special educational needs and disability. This week, we're discussing how to get your voice heard as a SENCO. And discussing this with me is Ginny Bootman. Ginny is a SENCO of 4 schools in Northamptonshire, so she has lots of experience of getting her voice heard. And she also delivers talks at various events around the country and has also written a book for SENCOs. The SENCast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. We are the assessment people. We are known for helping schools to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. But over the last few years, we've been creating an inclusive assessment system that can be used with all pupils in primary schools. The system has different levels of detail for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data, comparing your SEND pupils and your non-SEND pupils really simple. It also reduces teacher workload by only having to use one system, and our new features simplify report writing, and also it saves schools money. Less to manage, less to monitor. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through the assessment software and how it can help you. But before that, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing how to get your voice heard as a SENCO. My guest is Ginny Bootman. Ginny is currently a SENCO of 4 schools. It hasn't gone up again yet. She has been a teacher for a really long time, a senior manager and a head teacher. She speaks at various events around the country, including one coming up in Stoke in October that I am also speaking at, so come and join us. She also has written a book for SENCOs full of tips around building relations, saving time and changing lives. Welcome back to the show, Ginny.
Hello, it's great to be back.
Excellent. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been a while. It's been too long.
I didn't think. I literally was going, no, she wasn't on that long ago. I'm going, oh, it's been quite a while. But you're back now. That's what matters. So, the SENCO role is like no other role in a school. You are championing students who need support, but other priorities in the school means that they often aren't supported. And for SENCOs to be able to champion these students, to get that support, that voice needs to be heard. So, Ginny, how do you get your voice heard without using a megaphone?
I think people would say, Dale, I've never needed a megaphone to get my voice heard. I think it's really interesting because I have experience before I was a SENCO of the different styles of SENCOing. I have had a great experience of the gentleness of SENCOs, the fact that they come in to your classroom, they work alongside the teacher, they get to know the children, and the relationship between the class teacher and the SENCO is seamless. I have also experienced a SENCO who was quite hierarchical about their role, and that they were very demanding of a teacher and would literally storm in with a report in their hand and demand that a teacher did all of these recommendations on this report. And the teacher would say, I haven't got the support, I haven't got the TA. And it was very much a fait accompli, that it was like, this is what is in the report, get on with it. So I think coming from those two standpoints is a really good start when we're talking about getting our voice heard. And if I start from the point of view of class teachers and teaching assistants and staff who are with the children all the time, I think it is about immersing ourselves within those classrooms and listening to the people who are with those children all the time, because they know the children, they know the constraints within their classroom and within their timetable. And then from that, I always put it down to having a cup of tea, having a meeting, having a sit down, and having a really good two-way conversation. So I think that is really important, and finding the time for that. And in the same way, and I've learned over time, going back to the SENCO who brought the piece of paper in and handed the piece of paper over, actually, who is the right person to be in that meeting about that child? Actually, normally it is the teacher, it's the people who work with that child. So I think bringing it all back down to who knows the children best, and then having those two-way conversations and really listening to understand where the staff are coming from. So that's from a staff, teachers and TA point of view.
And just having a really simplistic with no other context of what those bits you said is, you got one who is coming in, spending time, getting to know you, there's a song which I won't go into, but it's that relationship. Yeah. So understanding, and they might have that same list. Yeah. Their motives might be the exact same list, but they're coming in, maybe asking you to do things, but you're going, well, we can't because of this. And ultimately, out of that list of 10 things, 6 might be implemented with understanding, with acceptance, because you've also listened to them and said that the other 4 can't happen. You're going, yeah, I get why they can't happen. And it's about that relationship that you're listened to because you're listening to them. Whereas the other person coming in, demanding, is not listening to anyone. They're not spending any time with anyone. And those 10 things aren't going to happen because you're not listening. They can't do the first 3 because of X, Y, Z. So why even bother the rest? Because you're already going to be against me. And it's about the relationship. It's about time in that moment. As you said, sitting down and I don't have the time. I do not have the time. And what we've got to just stop. And when we say we don't have the time, is spending a bit of time at that stage of what we need to do means what you're going to do is more effective, which means you're not wasting all that time over the next term being ineffective. That is wasting more time than having that meeting at the beginning to get what actually can we do, what is actually out of these 10 things, what is reasonably achievable, and what actually is maybe a bigger shift, which we can do later with more people on board, and what is for this child in this class not possible. But more time at the beginning means less wasted time later on.
Absolutely. And I think, like you're saying, it's about investing time and having a dialogue. And what I find is when I have built up that relationship, we then get more dialogue and people don't have as many barriers. So the SENCO who kind of stormed in, they had ticked something off their list, but actually it was going to cause more, as my dad would say, bother. It was going to cause more bother. There would be more time needed to unpick that. Another thing, which I think is very interesting as a SENCO, and at this time of year it's really interesting, is if you have got new members of staff starting in September, play a little bit of detective when they first come in, because what if their experience previously has been of a SENCO who has gone into the classroom in quite a hierarchical, I don't think that's even a word, but in a manner where they are
authoritarian.
Yeah, well done, thank you. Where they have been told what to do and not felt valued. So they may be expecting that when they come into a new setting. And so in September, I think it's very much about getting to know people as individuals before it's getting to know them, as individuals, about their likes and dislikes, and not about school. It's not all about school. It's about building relationships with people. And I've seen this. I talk about the armor that that we can all put on. But I see when those connections are actually happening and the connections are building, the armour comes off, and then people are more likely to ask for my support or opinion or advice, because they're like, she's all right. And actually, because we don't want to be judged. And that's what it comes down to as well. When people are putting barriers up, it's often because they find it difficult to kind of accept some advice. But when they get to know that a SENCO is a human person and that it's going to be a drip, that we're going to just give this one piece of advice that we can work together. So I think that's my biggest thing, actually, when we have new members of staff, to actually get to know them first.
Perhaps you are being given advice, like you're telling me, Dale, you need to do this. And I'm going, I really don't think that's going to work. You have to be the sort of person I can say that to. So I'm going, but Ginny, it's not going to work. And you would go, well, why? And I'll give you all my reasons. And you'll go, that's a good point, actually. How about we do this? Almost like, I'll prove to you. Or actually, from what you've said, this little bit here is, if we tweak that, it will work. But it's got to have that conversation. If you're walking and going, you need to do this, and I look at it going, yeah, it's not going to work. And you're that sort of person, I just won't do it. That's just partly me and my way I am. But it's got to be, as you said, the person knows the child, they know what's going to work. But at the same time, all their experiences of that child involve them and the way they do things. And sometimes you can get a bit stuck in the mud in the way you do things. And maybe changing something early on that you don't even notice having an impact can change things. But it's always conversations, because you are trying to change how someone is doing something which they've done for a very long time.
And so then I think it's really important that people are allowed to ask the question, why? Why?
Yes.
Why do you want me to do this? I need to know more about it. And I'm like, great. And then we can have that conversation. And I often talk about the 50-50 rule. My dad's a sheep farmer, and I think it's like when we used to shed the sheep. I don't know where the sheep went when they were shed into the two different places they went.
Morrison's.
Yeah, absolutely.
So back then, Safeways.
So, but when I speak with my colleagues, I think there is a 50-50 chance that somebody may go, okay, Ginny, yeah, I'll give that a shot, or I'm not really sure about this. And actually, then we have that dialogue, and we might not do that for that child. But let me give you I think it's quite a nice example of a colleague. I didn't know them very well, went into their classroom, and the child was not sitting facing the whiteboard. The child was sideways to the whiteboard. And I was like, oh, how am I going to manage this? Because I do think it does need changing. So after the lesson, I said to this person I didn't know very well, just an observation on my point, that the child is sitting and they're having to turn their body to look at the board because the table isn't facing the board. It might be something you want to consider, okay? And then I went to walk out the classroom, and she was like, where are you going? And I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done wrong? She said, come here, we need to move the tables. Of course this child needs to sit in front of the whiteboard. I hadn't even thought about that, thank you. But it's giving that ownership, isn't it? It's giving the ownership back, rather than you have to, and then people put their armour on and go, well, you don't realise that. It's like, you might want to consider, oh my gosh, yes. So, I think that's quite a nice, simple example of changing something. Another thing I've done is a sensory audit. And it came about that the heater in the classroom is really noisy. And I said, actually, it is really noisy. And they were like, do you know what? I'd never thought about how that would impact on children. But times when I'm doing whole class delivery, I'm going to turn it off now. So they are little things, aren't they, that make a big difference?
Yeah. And it's when you are doing something and you are having so many things to think about, having someone come in and focus on one small area and give that area that full attention will see something that you do not see. No matter how observant you are, you've got the 30 children, you're managing so many things, you've got all these things going on in your head. And someone just coming in and just spending a bit of time going, oh, actually, that can make a small change, but big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, one of those that if he moved him from there to there, it's like you haven't really got an argument against that sort of change. Yeah. If I move him, what's the negative impact? What's the negative? You can't really argue against it. But what's nice is if you maybe start with something small, which is hard to argue against, and it has an impact, when you come up with something bigger, you're like, well, actually, Ginny was right last time. So although I think this won't work, if it just makes life, if the things improve or things change, less disruption, whatever that impact's going to be, well, it might work. So I might as well give it a go.
Yeah.
But it is got to be respectful with time. And it's the time which I know you're all time poor. And I know. And I think there's another podcast for you and me, Ginny, around time and stuff. Because there is a thing that I think from lots of talking that not many SENCOs get to go sit and watch teachers teach. They're limited time. They're doing the paperwork. They're doing all the phone calls. They're doing all of that. They're not actually getting into the classroom and kind of looking at what teaching and learning looks like and making changes, which will therefore change things. They're almost like paperwork and doing that is still reactive. It's not the proactive part. And being in that classroom is that proactive part where actually we can support children better by tweaking things slightly. And maybe 20 small tweaks can lead to a big change. But unless you're in there not noticing, those changes can't happen.
And I completely agree with you. And I talk about yum yum time a lot, about Greggs and yum yums. And I say, as SENCOs, we need our yum yum time because we can find ourselves in a position whereby we are filling lots of paperwork. And I know when I get to that point of saturation, I go out of my office and I go and I immerse myself in the classroom. The other thing is, if I go into classrooms, I'm not really observing the teacher. I'm observing the child and how they are in the classroom, and I'm very interactive. So you will never see me standing up with a clipboard. I will be literally, with the children, sitting with them, learning about time and or singing to the preschool. They go, the singing ladies come in. You will all have a sing song. So I am very much part, and I think it's really important. I'm part of the classrooms. It's not, Ginny's coming in. And I think that this all paves the way because the children also know me, and I'll sit next to them and work with them on what they're doing in class. So it's kind of the normal. It's the norm that I will be going into classrooms, and I think that's really important for the staff and for the children. And another thing is I will probably go in for 10 minutes. I go in for 10 minutes and then I go out because that's manageable for everybody. And, it's a good way for me to use my time and get my kind of energy levels back up. So I think it's a win-win.
And I'm literally thinking about, as you're talking around it, it's almost a PDA style of practice because you're spending all the time with the children. You're focusing on the children. When you talk to the teacher, you're talking about the children. And you might say, Ginny's really struggling next to this hot radiator. You're not telling them to turn off. You're not telling teacher you need to turn off the hot radiator. You're saying, Ginny's really struggling next to this radiator because it's noisy. Basically, you're using that PDA approach of, here's a problem, you find the solution. It's like, I could turn the radiator off, couldn't I? And it is that kind of, you're not, because if you talk about you need to do this, that's critical. And I am on camera pointing at Ginny with my hand going, you need to do this. Whereas I'm looking at a child, I'm not looking at Ginny, or I'm looking where the child sits. So I'm not pointing at the child who's in the classroom. I'm looking where that child is sitting and going, look, whether you're talking about that, or when you're not talking at the person, you're talking at kind of what could change over there. Which again, you're not saying, Ginny, you're doing it wrong. You're saying, oh, have a look over there. It sounds like it doesn't make a difference, but it does.
And I'll tell you what makes a huge difference. So another anecdote is I went into a classroom. I went into a classroom. There you go. I went into a classroom and there was a child. Thank you. Dale is tapping. And there was a child sitting very close to a friend. And I thought that they might require more space in order for them to remain regulated. So I went up to the child, got a chair, was chatting to them, and I was like, oh, you've got loads of things on your table and your friend's really near. Is that okay? Or might you want more space? And he looked at me and he said, and on paper, it would have, the perception would be he needed more space. He said, I love sitting next to my friend. I don't want anything moving. This is perfect for me. And that stopped the conversation I would have had with the class teacher in a meeting away from the child. So actually, I think that's really important as well. And I spoke to the class teacher and said, oh, do you know, I thought this, but actually, he's really happy where he is. And she was like, I thought that too, but thank you. You've had a chat with him and we'll keep it as it is. So I think this idea of being with the children, asking the children what they think and what they would like in an ideal world, actually stops any misconceptions happening when you're having a meeting away from the child with the class teacher, because we can presume. Another one is I had a child who had a workstation and I just brought loads of things and said, what would you like for a sensory toolbox? And the child did not want anything that I had provided. And then he went for his little walk around the classroom and he got a clean paintbrush. He got some plastic toys, got all these things himself, sorted them all out as required by that child. And that was a real learning curve for me, because it was like, actually, who knows themselves better than the individual, than the child? And they were so pleased and proud of themselves. So, I think it's not presuming and not taking the meeting away from the child.
I like both of those stories because I've been to conferences where I've watched people say, all children with autism, and then continue. And I'm like, your first three words, all children with, or first four words with autism. I'm like, whatever you're going to say now is completely wrong, and I'm not going to listen to it because it's a lie. It's a lie. You cannot start a sentence with all children with autism. Or only thing you can say is all children with autism are alive. I think that's the end of your all children part. Everyone is different. So when you get, this is what autism looks like, this is how you support autism, that's lovely. When you get a child's paperwork, and you might have had for that first child, needs space, needs this. Well, that's a lot of professionals talking about a child. And it's a phrase which I keep coming up with, done to us, not with us. I love that phrase. Joanna Grace introduced me to it. And I absolutely love it. And again, you've got your EHCP meeting, you've got all of this going on, all these professionals having a conversation about the child without the child in reality. You sat there and you had all this information. I went, this is telling me I have to do this. You asked the child, it's like, no, that's not me. And I think that is so important, that all these things you think you should do because someone's autistic, because of someone's this, find out from them. Yeah. it might be with those paintbrushes, all those things you brought in, and I see it on, what should I put in a sensory toolbox for children? And I'm like, you're wasting time, you're wasting money, because you do not know what works for child A will not work for child B. There are some maybe type of things which work, but you can't just say this is what's in our sensory toolbox. It's got to be child specific.
And I think when we're talking about getting our voice heard, actually, it's about getting our voice heard with the most important people, who are the children. So I think getting their voice heard to us is really important. I think if we're just going back a little bit to staff, I think it's really important to invest in the people who have their armour on. And I think it's about in the morning going and seeing those people when you are energized. I think it's about us going, actually, do you know what? I'm going to go in and see this person who has their armour on, and I'm going to ask them about their holiday or their dog or something, and building those relationships up. And I think by doing that, we are listened to. Maybe that's a better way, getting your voice heard or being listened to. I think that's what it's about. That I had a member of staff who I worked with who had their armour on, and when I first walked into the classroom, it was like they were driving and I was the police behind them, and they were, oh, it's Ginny, what's she going to ask? It wasn't to do with me, it was to do with previous experiences, because they had a SENCO who had come in and demanded, maybe metaphorically with a megaphone. And then over time, our relationship, developed. And the best thing that ever happened to me was I walked into their classroom one day and they said, oh, it's you, Ginny. That's okay. And their shoulders went down.
You're on our side.
Yeah,
you're not one
exactly.
of them.
Yeah, we're on the same side. It's only you, Ginny, was the best thing I could ever have heard, because it was like she's coming to probably talk about nothing to do with special needs, because actually we can talk about things that aren't special needs. Anyone who works with me knows if I go in the staff room, I will talk initially about something that is nothing to do with special needs, because I'm allowed to.
No, you're lulling them, you're tricking them, you're lulling to a false sense of security. We're just going to talk about biscuits, and then I'm going to hit you with special needs.
Well, no, it just carries on with biscuits, actually, Dale, often.
Yeah.
Because the staff room is not a place, I feel, for a huge discussion about special needs. I will have a meeting about that. So I think it is important that we have those conversations with the right people at the right time.
Yep. So let's take a step, kind of zoom out a little bit. So let's say over the last year, from September last year, you've had these successful conversations. You've gone in, you've been listened to by the children, you've listened to the children, you've listened to the staff, and they've listened to you. And those small changes have happened. What kind of impacts do you see over that year because of that? Because you're listened to, and because those relationships are there, and everyone's kind of communicating with each other rather than working alongside each other and not listening. What kind of impacts are you seeing?
I think when this works, it becomes, we are a team. And when I ask colleagues to complete, for example, some paperwork, they are more likely to do it because they know there is a reason behind it. I'm all for any paperwork that we complete has got a reason behind it. So I think the fact that the relationships are strong, that people do things more readily. People also question me more, which I always think is a positive. People will say to me, Ginny, I've been thinking about this. And I will go, do you know what? I hadn't thought about it in that way. maybe we can change something, because I absolutely get where you're coming from. And that might be teachers, TAs, parents. It is that openness that people then feel that they can approach me where previously they might not have, because they might not have known what my response would be. So I think it is an openness, and that people are happy to give me kind of their ideas about how we can move things forward, which is great, and I love that. And I think sometimes people can be closed, and I think if people are closed off, if you're closed off as a SENCO, there are many reasons why. Many reasons why. I'm fortunate that I am able to have an open mind about many things and change things accordingly. So I think that's the main one, is that we change things together, Dale.
And in terms of what this means for pupils and families, I'm really going to summarize it really quickly, really simplistically, as I'm going to guess happier children, improved outcomes, less disruption, better relationships with parents.
Yeah. And I think when we have to have those tricky conversations, because we have got that connection, we can have those what would be trickier conversations and could be confrontational. They become easier, and that's ultimately what we want, isn't it? That we can have those conversations about these children, and everybody can understand where the other person is coming from and value everybody's input.
And I'm guessing if you are able to implement more of those strategies that support those children, and you're listening to those children and you're then adapting them further to suit that individual child, those parents will become less of those angry parents and will become less enemies and more allies.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing the changes,
Yeah.
which isn't just an impact on you maybe having less phone calls with them. It means that when the teacher speaks to them each morning, at the end of the day, it's going to be a nicer conversation. So there's a lot of changes that are happening, which sound quite small. I'm not going to be, I could do a graph if I do lots of work around it, but it might not be impacting school results hugely. It might not be doing that, but it could impact school results if there's less disruption. If you're not, there's lots of little things, but for those children and for those families, it's a huge benefit. You also, in reality, if you're removing barriers, you're not just removing them from the children, you're removing them from the teachers as well. If you're reducing extra work, if you're reducing things that take extra effort, and you're kind of just taking those away, so there isn't extra effort required in those just by doing this little change here first, it's better for everyone.
And I think if we extend that to, say, senior leadership and the head teachers about getting our voice heard as a SENCO, I think that is really interesting, because I've also had experience of SENCOs complaining to senior leaders and head teachers about things. And I have experienced a head teacher who has said, "Oh, Brenda's complaining again," So I advocate finding a solution to the problem, and giving a solution that I feel may work to a problem that I have seen. And I don't know if, because I've been in the job so long, because I've been in education so long, that I appreciate the barriers that head teachers and senior leaders are facing. I don't know if it's because I've been a head teacher, but I understand that if I am giving a solution to a problem, they will not always act on what I have said. And it comes back to my 50-50 again. And I am more than ever accepting of that, because I do not know everything else that is happening within their minds, within their workload. But I try to give clear solutions so that people can mull it over and they've got all of the information, and then they can come back to me. And that is my way of doing it, and it works well for me. I used to, earlier in my career, be kind of, if I asked for something and somebody didn't action on what I did, I used to, I don't think I did stamp my foot, but I kind of did, but I've said this, but hello, I've said this. Whereas now I'm more, is it pragmatic? I'm more like, actually, this is in a whole context. I am able to say what I think will work. And if others feel that that isn't the way forward, that's okay. But as SENCOs, I feel very strongly that we get our voice heard by making it clear what our thoughts and views are and why. And then we let others percolate it or mull it over. But we have to, I think we have a duty to say what we think does need doing, because people aren't mind readers.
And that's the thing, saying something and being heard or being listened to is two different things. One, you've got to make sure you're saying it, but two, for them to hear it, or they need to be there. They need to be in that room with you. For them to listen means think about it and act on it or respond. There needs to be that relationship with you will really influence that. And as you said, and as I said right at the beginning, they've got lots of other priorities. Yeah, these are my priorities. I need you to do this. It's what those other priorities are and where they come from. And if I summarize the answer to the question of how do you get your voice heard as a SENCO, to me, the answer is you need the time to build the relationships with the children, with the staff, so you can make a difference in that school. Once you start making a difference, those little bits, you will be heard more. So you need the time. So part of it is going to your senior leaders and either asking for more time or asking for that SEN admin time so you can take bits off you so you have that time to make a difference. And it's really highlighting to them those benefits of, if you give me this much time a week, half a day a week to go do this, or however long it will take to go and do these kind of go around the classes and just spend half a day, however long a week, getting to know the children and the staff and making a difference in the classroom, not just doing paperwork, there will be a difference by the end of the year in every classroom. If there's a difference at the end of the year in every classroom, surely all of our children will have improved outcomes. And I know you can speculate, but it is knowing there is support at every level for the children, knowing they got someone to go support to. For that teacher, if they're not sure, it's all about the relationships, and the relationships take time. You can't rush it. You can't walk in with a packet of yum-yums and think that's going to fix everything. It's not having the yum-yums. It's spending time sitting with them, eating the yum-yums that makes the difference.
I love this analogy. I love it. More yum-yums.
I'm literally going, yeah, it's not about having them. It's about spending time and enjoying them together.
Yeah. I'm with you, Dale.
So that's what I would say. It's the time. Everything you've talked about is about time, but it makes a big difference. You need time to listen. And with the rising numbers and everything going on, more disruption, more teachers going, I don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure how to do this. You need to be kind of in there seeing it, kind of being able to offer those supports, because you are the person who doesn't know everything, because you never will, but you kind of have enough to support, give some tips. And you can always go away and find out more answers.
Oh my goodness, I constantly find out new things. And I think going back to that, I think one thing that is so important is championing the teachers and the staff who work with the children, because actually educators are very hard on themselves. And we always think, what haven't I done? What haven't I done? And it's like, do you know what? Saying to the staff, you are doing an amazing job with the children in your care. never, ever forget what educators do day in, day out intuitively. They don't acknowledge themselves. So
No.
I think that is so important. And in the same way, SENCOs need to value themselves and actually say, we need a meeting. I need to have a meeting with the senior leadership about this so that I can present it to you fully. Please get that put in the diary early on in autumn term so that I can share this with you. And once again, it's about everyone valuing that time as, right, this is really important that we have a meeting about this so that we all understand there is a time for an email, but there is also time for senior leaders, head teachers, SENCOs to sit down and have that conversation over a cup of tea. That's very important.
And a yum yum.
And a yum yum.
Yep. It's time, and you literally, the more you talk about it's time and relationships. It just comes across in so many podcasts, and it's the same for the teacher and the child. Yeah, I see lots of things on social media and Reddit and wherever going disruption or thing, and you read them and you're literally going, you're being that authority or that dictator. You're being that authoritarian. You must do because, as I say, yeah, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to get the job done type attitude. And you're like, no wonder the kids aren't behaving for you. Wherever would you go if someone treated you like that? Would you stay? If a waiter came along and was doing their job but was slightly rude, you would never go back. But children don't have that. So that relationship at every level is really important. You're going to get the best out of them, and they're going to get the best out of you if you like each other.
And it comes, doesn't it, from the greeting at the door, whomever you are, all children are so intuitive. And in fact, we're all intuitive. The body language actually is the thing that lets us know initially if somebody likes us,
Yeah.
and it does come back to that.
In my wife's school, she's in an ASD ADHD school. She's got a small class, and one of the kids, year 6, they sort of went, we're all nerds. And I went, what do you mean we're all nerds? You're all nerds. And he literally kind of went, I'm the nerd of this. This is my special interest. Their special interest. And he recognised their knowledge in those areas. And it was nice. He's literally pointing out all his classmates what they're nerds at. We're all nerds. We all have our special interests. I like my wife then went, well, what am I a nerd of? Which wasn't I'm over here and you're there. She basically like, I'm with you.
Yes.
Which was a nice little thing. Well, what am I? If I'm with you, what am I a nerd of? And he paused and went, nerd of kindness.
Oh my goodness. I want to be a nerd of kindness. Can she share the sash?
No, I made her, I went on Etsy and bought her a badge. Oh. That's another thing. Her wearing that badge and him seeing that badge, you listened so much. You told your husband because you're so... It's that being listened to in that relationship. You need to be there. You need to be able to have that conversation to get that bit of intuition, to get that little thing, and then doing that little kind of responding to that.
I love it.
As I think about it more, there's more to that interaction than you kind of see on that surface level. There's so much more to it, and I love it.
It is. Oh, this is a bit deep and meaningful. It is like breathing. The interaction we have with everybody has to be part of our being. It's not a bolt on. It's not like, I better talk to Dale about his nerdiness. It is actually... And it's just part of what we are as educators.
And we also, reality, if you are walking around, Jenny, quite calm and relaxed breathing, and you walk into class and that teacher is fast breathing, you two aren't on the same page. You're not going to listen to each other because you're different priorities. For whatever reason, they're fast breathing. You're not going to listen to each other.
And in that situation, I would say, are you okay? Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a breather? And they might say yes. You're absolutely right. It is about gauging the people in front of you, whoever they are, and acting in a way that is appropriate for that moment, which might be, do you want a drink? Do you want a cup of tea? Or it might be moving away from them. Shall I come back later? It's like a dance, isn't it? It's kind of this actually, how is this person? How do they need me to behave? And actually, it comes back to everyone, doesn't it? A child, a parent, a member of staff, SLT, head teacher. I'm coming to talk to you about, actually, you're a bit busy. I'll come back later. Let's have a meeting. It is that gauging people for when is the right time to have that important conversation.
Definitely. I think we'll wrap it up there. I think we've done a nice summary at the end there.
I think we will wrap it up with a bow.
Love Actually, Rowan Atkinson style.
Well, whatever. Yeah.
Is that too much?
It is a bit too much, but hey, it's okay. If that's your nerdiness, that's fine.
But that's another example of two people who weren't aligned. There's that person going, I need to do the best job ever. And the person going, look, just stick a bow on it. It's enough. Let me get out of here.
Sometimes there's a place for, that bow that's like a rose and it's just got the self-adhesive bit and you just stick it on. Sometimes,
yes.
Sometimes that's what you need. And sometimes you need the full bowage kind of experience.
Yes, definitely. So thank you again for coming on the show today. But you've written a book, haven't you?
I have indeed, yes. I've written a book called Independent Thinking on Being a SENCO, and I'm reading from the front cover, 113 tips for building relationships, saving time and changing lives. It is very much, as the conversation has been with Dale, a very chatty book. People say it's a kind of sit down and have a cup of tea with it. But it's from Crown House Publishing, and if you would like to purchase it, we have got a code, haven't we, Dale, which is Ginny 20.
Yes, and but that works on the Crown House website. It won't work anywhere else. Go to the Crown House website. You can use that discount code to get a discount, which is rather nice. And sadly, it isn't a yum cookbook. It would have been lovely. Maybe the next time. But you probably don't cook them. You just buy them, don't you?
Yeah. Oh gosh, yum-yums. You buy them and then you devour them happily. Yeah, no cooking involved.
I love the fact you didn't go, I'll stop at 100. That's a nice number. I won't go for 120 or 125. 113. Because, I'm not going to add 7 in, which aren't really great tips, just to make a nice number. I'm not going to reduce them because it is what it is. And I like that.
Yeah, and that is exactly how it was. It was like, how many are there? There are 113. Well, then we shall go with 113, which I loved. Can I just say how people can find me as well? So I'm on X at SENCO Girl, and you can also find me on my website, Ginny Bootman. Drop me a line, get in touch.
And all of Ginny's contact details, socials, and website stuff as well. So thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You can find the link to subscribe across all the different platforms on the website, or wherever you listen to podcasts, there'll be a subscribe button somewhere, and you'll get that new episode every single Thursday. Now, everyone knows B Squared for helping schools to show the small sets of progress pupils with SEND make. Over the last few years, we've been creating an inclusive assessment system that can be used with all pupils in primary schools. The system has different levels of details for different levels of ability. So you don't have to use RSEN content for those working at ARE. We've got a much simpler way of assessing. But it makes looking at whole school data, comparing your SEND pupils and your non-SEND pupils really, really simple. It's one single code data set for the whole school. Not here's my SEN data, here's my non-SEN data. It's one data set. It also reduces teacher workload by only having one system to use. And our new features simplify report writing, and also just using one system saves money, saves training, saving admin time, and so much more. If you're interested and want to find out more, you'll find a link to the website to book a meeting with me in the show notes. You can also find out our online training, our conferences, read our blog, watch our webinars. It's all on the B Squared website. And you'll find that stuff in the show notes. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the SENCast. It is goodbye from me.
And it is goodbye from the Yum Yum lady.
The Yum Yum lady who wears red sparkly shoes.
That's it.
Bye, everyone.